Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
What is going on a Wednesday night, Chris? You've been running around like a chicken with your head cut off today, dude. You feeling all right? You good?
It has been one of those days. I'm actually feeling really good, man. I've really been enjoying the fall weather today. Fantastic.
It's like mid-50s out there. It's a little dreary, kind of rainy, kind of nasty.
Yeah, but I love that. I love that stuff.
But yeah, it was a good day. Got a lot of good stuff up over on the website, so go check that out, WolverineDigest.com. Again, man, big shout-outs to our two interns putting in work, man. Josh Taubman, Jacob Cohen, couple students at Michigan write for the Daily, and they have been killing it for us, putting up some really, really good stuff, both really good writers. So I want to shout them out. They've been doing a really good job. And another guy that I know is going to do a really good job here for us tonight, Mr. Richie Schneidwright, the foremost expert on Rutgers football. And it's funny, before we went live, we were talking about this. Richie and I worked together for Rivals for, until I left there a couple years ago. A lot of communication back and forth. Michigan used to recruit New Jersey a ton. There were some transfer guys that went from Michigan out to Rutgers. We communicated a whole bunch, met each other maybe once or twice at a Rivals camp in New Jersey, I think is maybe about it, right, sure. Richie? Something like that.
Yeah,
but
that's about it.
We've communicated a bunch and always value your opinion. So thank you so much for coming on to talk about Rutgers tonight, man.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me. This is a nice little setup you got. I like the little intro.
Yeah. We're trying to do it big. We're trying to have a little production value here, trying to do it right. We've got some drops.
I just want to start by saying go blue.
We throw that kind of stuff out there. Richie Schneidwright. Dog. He's a dog. All right. So we got,
right. I like that.
We got some stuff in there, but no, look, man, this is a Rutgers team that for a lot of years, not a lot of respect thrown their way, but I think that's changing. That's shifting. I don't know how good they are yet. They're off to a 3-0 start. I think people are really excited about that. But that's where I want to start, man. What is the fan base thinking? What are the media people thinking about this 3-0 start and kind of where they're at now with Greg Schiano getting settled back in and doing things well again, it looks like?
Yeah, I mean, if you talk to the fan base, you'd think they're going undefeated this year. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but heck of a start, 3-0. The biggest issue with it that the media and I guess myself have, you didn't play anyone really that good. Temple, Syracuse, and then Delaware is like, it's FCS. It is what it is. So it's really hard to tell, but so far so good. The stats have been through the roof. Noah Vedral just threw for 300 yards, and I think the first time in his collegiate career between UCF, Nebraska, and Rutgers that he's been at. Other than that, the offense has been stagnant at times, but the defense has been phenomenal. Overall, it's still a lot of question marks, and that's why this is kind of the litmus test coming up this Saturday.
Yeah, I think Michigan – to some extent, kind of going through the same thing. Chris and I all offseason talked about this matchup with Washington week 2 and how it was supposed to be this huge deal. And then Washington loses to Montana, and then they can't do anything against Michigan. It was like, all right, well, that wasn't it. And then 2 MAC schools, and now Rutgers, again, it's not Ohio State. It's not Penn State, but it's a scrappy team with a couple talented guys, and Greg Schiano had a lot of success there before. I just wonder, is there, we'll get to the specifics of it towards the end, but is there a vibe? You just said they think they're going undefeated. We don't know about that, right? We'll wait and see. But is there a belief? Last year it took them, Michigan to triple overtime to get a win in Piscataway. Empty stadium, really weird feeling, weird vibe. But is there some confidence that they can come to Ann Arbor and beat this Michigan team with as good as they've looked through 3 weeks?
Again, among the fan base, they kind of think it's going to be a close game. I can't see it. This Michigan team has the best rushing offense in the country, and as we know of the 2020 Rutgers team, that rushing defense has struggled at times. That's why the numbers are a little skewed. They're only giving up, I think, 110, 114 yards rushing per game, but as opposed to last year, they gave up, I think, 205 rushing yards per game. So that's clearly their weakness under DC Rob Smith, and that's clearly Michigan's entire offense this year. So it's going to be hard to stop guys like Corum and Haskins who have been absolutely killing it. I think the team as a whole is averaging over 7 yards per carry, which is insane.
Every week has been like, oh, they go for 320 against Western, then they go for 345 against Washington, then 375 again. It's like, all right, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I expect that's probably what we'll see against Rutgers as well.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned some of the specifics there. Before we get into the offensive side, the defensive side, some of these players, what's going on with these suspensions? What is happening in Piscataway right now? What did these kids do, and what's going on?
Apparently they're drive-by paintball shooting random people, which is like, what the hell are you doing? Like,
exactly.
I get it. Like, you're freshmen, you're a little immature, but it doesn't make sense because the one kid, Malachi Melton, whatever you want to call him, he's such a nice kid. He comes from a great family. Older brother Bo is this number one receiver on the team this year, or every year, I guess you could say. But it's just really questionable. According to one of the reports from NJ.com, that they apparently they were drive-by shooting with paintballs, and 3 people got hit and reported to authorities. I guess the next morning they found out the car, and then so on and so on. Obviously, they were arrested, or not arrested. They were taken into custody, quote unquote. So they were released on their own reconnaissance. They're suspended, but there's no timetable for how long it is, or we don't even know if he's technically suspended for the game at this point. You would assume so, because like that's like a zero discipline type thing. Like you can't let that slide. But losing your starting cornerback, leading interception guy, leading pass deflection guy, and Max Melton is huge. But Chris Long is the other freshman. He's pretty far back on the depth chart, but again, a freshman, so you can't expect much. But there's no real timetable for this suspension or see how long it will last. My best guess is it's either there's 2 ways of going about it. You either set like the precedent now and go 3 games and just say done with it. I won't see you for 3 games. You could practice or whatever, or you go 1 game and kind of just sweeping under the rug.
It's freshmen being dumb. I mean, that's pretty dumb. I mean, I don't think
that's a lot of dumb, right?
There's not a lot of ways to polish that. You can't drive around and shoot people with paintball guns. Like, that's pretty. Is it armed robbery? No. Are you beating someone up? No. But like, that's pretty dumb.
Michigan week. You can't do it Michigan week, right? You can do
that too. Like
that's the thing. It killed a lot of hype, I feel like, because all the message board keeps talking about is these suspensions. When beforehand it was like, we're 3-0, that we could probably beat Michigan. Like, we have a shot. I mean, no, but go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you touched on it a little bit. How good is this Max Melton kid? I mean, he's a freshman, but he's the legacy there, and he's playing and starting, making plays. I mean, obviously that's a big loss.
So I say freshman, but technically I guess he's a second-year freshman because that's stupid 2020 year. Count, blah, blah, blah. No, he's a very good player. He's a good coverage corner. He one-on-one coverage corner, actually. Very dominant on the outside. He started, I want to say, 4 games last year as a true freshman, and then this year he came into the camp and just impressed a lot and took the job over, no questions asked, and 2 interceptions in 3 games. And like I said, I think 6 pass deflections against a Tommy DeVito quarterback who's pretty good, Dwan Mathis who's pretty good, and then honestly, I think the best quarterback of the 3, and this is kind of a little off topic, out of the 3 out of conference games is Nolan Henderson. That kid from Delaware is phenomenal.
The couple you mentioned before, obviously Dwan Mathis, that's a Michigan kid. He started out at Georgia and transferred, real athletic. But yeah, there's some talent there. So he's faced some decent guys. I guess that's a good measuring stick for how good he's been. Yeah, just that's a bummer. I mean, it came across the ticker a day or 2 ago, and me and Chris are both like, "What the hell?" Yeah, exactly. What the hell are you doing? What are you thinking right there?
I don't know. It's very questionable, man. It's like you said, what the heck is in your head thinking like I'm gonna go shoot some kids on? I don't even know if it was kids. We didn't get the police report yet, but we filed the OPA request, so we'll find out. And if you need the story, it'll be on our site. So,
well, there you go. All right, so let's get into the guys who will be on the field. You touched on this a little bit already too. Jim Harbaugh called them salty. He said they got a salty defense. They've got some playmakers on offense. They'll bite you if you let them bite you. What's the identity? What's the identity on offense? The identity on defense for this Rutgers team?
So that's the weird thing is they've played a lot of nickel over the past year and a half. I'm going to call it, I guess, year and a quarter. They played a ton of nickel, and that's where a kid like Max Melton would help. But now it's like you're going against a crazy rushing attack. You probably want to run like more of a traditional 4-3. Heck, you could kind of run a 4-4 or 4-4 if you really want to. It's like, how else are you going to stop this kid Haskins and Corum? But overall, they're just a feisty defense. They forced 7 I think it was 7 last year against Michigan State in the season opener.
Wow.
They're led by Olakunle Fatukasi. Sorry, I gotta slowly pronounce
That's a
that.
tough one. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
mouthful.
Some might know his older brother, Foley Fatukasi, the starting defensive tackle for the Jets.
Okay.
Very, very good linebacker. Dick Buck, his semifinalist last year. All Big Ten first team. Led the team in tackles with like 120 plus last year. He's had a hot start to the season. He's second in the team in sacks with 2.5. He's got a forced fumble. The defense kind of tries to feed towards his way, obviously, because he's clearly the best player back there. But overall, he's a heck of a sideline-to-sideline guy. Crazy speed, will hit you like a ton of bricks. And other than him, I really like one player I didn't mention in that, the know the enemy.
Yeah.
Know thy enemy. There you go. Julius Turner. He's gotten a lot of love from like a couple NFL scouts. He's super undersized at 6 foot tall in the defensive tackle, but he's 275. But that undersized kind of helps him when it comes to like pad level to get underneath guys on the interior. He had 3 sacks on the year. Going into the season, he had 3.5 on his career. Now he has 3 sacks on this year alone. Super quick, super agile, and he's another guy that's just gonna fight tooth and nail to get that. Yeah, geez, can't talk. To get to that quarterback. But overall, it's a feisty defense. They're gonna fight you tooth and nail, and that's if they want any chance in hell of winning this game, they're gonna have to do something about that run game, and they're gonna have to maybe force McNamara to throw the ball.
Yeah, well, I did a radio spot earlier today in Ann Arbor, and that was the question that they threw at me. And I don't know the ins and outs of what Rutgers is going to do, but if you don't sell out to stop the run, it's going to be a long day. So my question is, and you mentioned the absence of Max Melton certainly comes into play here. If they do sell out, you've got 8-9 guys in the box. What kind of athletes do they have on the back end to run with Michigan speedy receivers, bigger guys like Dalen Baldwin and Cornelius Johnson? Like, how do these matchups kind of look if they shift what they do traditionally to try to really at least keep that run game bottled up a little bit?
It's going to be tough because I do think Cade McNamara at the end of the day can sling the ball. I know he's only thrown, I think, 36 completions or something like that on the year.
Yep.
He can sling the ball, so it's going to be tempting to throw to like a guy like Cornelius, who I'm actually pretty fond of. I watched him in high school up in Connecticut, and very good player. But regardless, they have a couple good corners in Trey Avery, who's a former Ohio State commit that actually transferred in. I think he went to Toledo, then transferred in 2016. Very good cornerback. He's a little on the smaller side, I think at 5'11", 5'10"-ish, but very good one-on-one guy. But losing Melton's going to hurt. So now you have a couple options. The one that you would hope is going to happen is Patrice Rene, who missed the first 3 games as a UNC transfer. I think he started 10 out of 10 games last year for UNC or 9 games.
I remember him. I remember him well. I thought Michigan should have recruited him harder personally. He's a Canadian kid. I think he was linked up with like Luigi Villain and some of those other guys.
Yep, exactly.
And I don't know. I fizzled out or got injured or something at Carolina, but he's a talented big kid. Yeah.
So when the whole coaching change happened with Mac Brown, I think he kind of like lost his spot a little bit. So
okay.
But either way, very, very good cornerback. If you watch his tape, even at UNC, he was pretty solid.
Yeah.
But he missed the first 3 games with an undisclosed injury because, you can't report injuries in college football, blah, 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 whatever. But, so ideally you get him back and you get that basically a Melton clone, so to speak, because he's around the same size as Melton. If not, the number 4 corner, whatever you want to call him, would have to be Kassan Abram, who's probably sitting at 5'8", 5'9". But I asked Shiano about him on Monday and him stepping up, and he said something along the lines of like he might be smaller than most guys, but he'll fight tooth and nail for that ball. And he's actually been their number 2 pass coverage guy in terms of PFF grades this year. So it's going to be interesting. And then Avery Young, who fans might know a little bit about, has been with the team for a while, has shifted to safety, and he's going to be back there with Christian Izzian, who's again another undersized kid. I think he's around 5'10", but he can probably out-jump most receivers if I had to guess. If you've seen highlights of the kid, he has an interception last year. I forget who it was against. His vertical is insane. But overall, it's going to be interesting. I think you have to force Cade to try to throw the ball. Is it going to work? In my opinion, no. But I guess it's kind of a wait-and-see approach.
I think if you're hoping to take away what Michigan's been really good at this year, you got to try to do that. But easier said than done, no doubt, when you look at what they've been able to do in the numbers. All right, you mentioned Noah Vidal. Had a pretty good game against Michigan last year. Michigan fans will remember him. You just mentioned he's been hot a little bit this year. How good is this guy? How good is Noah Vidral? What can Michigan fans expect in round 2, I guess you can call it, even though last year was just such a weird game and Michigan was kind of all over the place in that one and barely squeaked out a victory.
Yeah, I mean, so far, so good for Vedral.
Sorry, I probably said it wrong.
No, you're good. No, I mean, 64% completion percentage on the year. That's huge. No turnovers. That's also huge. This is a guy that I think had 7-8 interceptions last year. I think he even had a couple fumbles lost too. But so far, so good. He's not doing anything too crazy. They didn't really take that many deep shots versus Temple or Syracuse, which is kind of weird because you think you'd rather show your hand against those two teams versus a Delaware, but I guess try to keep everything off film. They took a couple deep shots last game. I think just because it's Michigan and it's the first conference game, they're going to try to get a little more creative this game just to try to spice it up and try to score points at this point. But ironically, I don't know. I don't really know what to expect from him. He's a really good game manager. He can hit that first and second level, but he really struggles when it comes to that deep ball. Doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but so far, so good. He's been really accurate, and there's not much else you could say on the kid. And he's mobile at times too.
Yeah, taking care of the ball, completing a high percentage, you'll make a lot of coaches happy doing that. But again, you need explosiveness. You need to win against a better team. Yeah, we've had that discussion about Michigan and Cade McNamara. Honestly, like they've looked really good through 3 games, but they've been beaten up on inferior opponents. You wonder if suddenly Cade is asked to throw it 20, 30, 40 times. Like, what does that look like? And I kind of get some of those same vibes with Vedral coming into this one where he's going to have to put it up. If he does, Bo Melton's really freaking good. Like, this kid can play. He could play at any school in the Big Ten. Michigan recruited him pretty hard coming out of high school. I believe he's a legacy at Rutgers, though, right? His family's from there. Yeah. So it was kind of a no-brainer that he ended up there. His younger brother, we've already touched on, is probably going to miss the game for the paintball incident. But how good is Bo Melton? I mean, this is a kid that makes plays against anybody.
Bo honestly, so going back to the legacy thing, his mom played basketball at Rutgers, his dad played football at Rutgers, so it was kind of a no-brainer type thing.
Yep.
How the hell Chris Ash landed him? Beyond beyond me. That guy. Oh, don't even get me started on him. We'll talk about him later maybe. But he hasn't really shown much in his first 2-3 seasons, and then all of a sudden last year he just bursted onto the scene. Probably has something to do with Sean Gleason as offensive coordinator. He's got creative with the ball. He's kind of giving them end arounds. He's doing all types of things with Bo this year and last year, I guess, too. So far, so good situation. He has 200 yards on the year. I think 2-3 touchdowns. I forget exactly what it is, but he's been the minute you get him in open space, that's when he gets the most dangerous. So it's basically Vedral, don't do anything crazy. Just get either him or Aaron Cruikshank or Shamin Jones. Just get them the ball and let them do their thing, and then nothing else is on you. Just keep the ball in your hands. If you get it to them, great. If not, hold on to it and do not lose it. So that's pretty much the offense.
That's it doesn't sound that different from what people are, what Cade McNamara has been asked to do. Get it to the athletes, get it to those running backs, take care of the ball. Again, Michigan, no turnovers yet through 3 games either.
Right.
So pretty similar there. I'm going to give you the floor just for a second. I mean, it's kind of a moot point, but if you want to go off on Chris Ash for a second, I think our listeners would enjoy that.
Oh my God.
Let's hear it.
Let me think. The best
former Ohio State guy, former head coach at Rutgers. Michigan fans would love for you to back on him.
Okay, I got a good story for you guys. All right, this was one of the rivals camps. I forget which one. So basically, no coaches can attend, but if your son's there, you can attend.
Mm-hmm.
Just did him a little favor, got his son in. Showed up. He didn't talk to me. He ignored me when I asked him a question. I was like, yeah, screw you, whatever. I don't care. I was like, you know what? Hey, Zukudu, you're 6'6", right? Go one-on-one real quick. Torched him.
Torch his kid. You put his kid on. I like that. I like that approach.
Got the video too. I got to find it, but it's somewhere on YouTube.
How long did he last at Rutgers?
Longer than he should have.
Was it 3 years?
Yeah, I think it was 3 seasons, right?
3 seasons.
Yeah, I think it was 3 years, 3.25, I believe it was. Because year 2, 2-10, 4-8, and it's like, holy shit, this guy might be it. And then 1-11, 2-10, and not 2-10, 1-4, 1-3, and then
I think the Rutgers game that I remember the most is when we went on the road. It might have been the first year we played them, but I think Brady Hoke was still there. They did a blackout in the crowd. They had like these alternate uniforms on. And I remember thinking to myself, like, damn, like Rutgers, was that the loss too? Michigan lost their first game against Rutgers. And I remember thinking like, man, Rutgers might be like, they might be a problem moving forward. Obviously I was wrong, but I mean, there was a point in time where it seemed like it was rocking and Piscataway for sure.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's back during Shiano's first tenure, but going back to the blackout a little bit on that's the Komoko Toure. That's like the signature field goal block for the win. And ever since then, it's been a ton of, I guess there's been a little animosity between the programs ever since then. Maybe it's just on this side, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's been kind of this, I mean, it goes back to the beginning of the Harbaugh era where they were really, really rating the state of New Jersey for talent. They were recruiting there. They were pulling coaches out of there. I know there was some rumors going around that Rutgers was close to hiring Chris Partridge, but some people didn't really sign off on it. Then he ends up at Michigan, and you've got the Campanelli. So there was some New Jersey back and forth stuff, and then the satellite camp thing where I don't remember. Chris Ash said something about Michigan, and they were at this camp, and I don't know. Then there's the 78-0 game. I'm sure that didn't sit real well with some folks. And
let's not forget.
So there's been a little back and forth.
Let's not forget the biggest thing that I think that pissed off Rutgers fans the most was him after the press conference. I think it was the 78-0 actually. After the game, he's like, "Yeah, Rob Ash," and it's like, who?
Oh man. So yeah. So there is a little bit of animosity there, a little bit of bad blood. I mean, this game. You've kind of hinted at it already, Richie. Michigan is a 20.5-point favorite in this one. That's just a point less than it was against Northern Illinois, which seems crazy to me. I think Rutgers is better than that, but the way Michigan has looked, they've been crushing spreads this year, like absolutely crushing them. I think I'd pick them to cover. I'm going to look at it a little bit more. I'm going to digest what you're saying to us here tonight. I'll read back through the stuff that you sent me. But where do you kind of fall on this one in terms of how it actually looks and plays out on the field?
Well, I mean, if you're on what's your website called again? Sorry.
WolverineDigest.com.
If you're on WolverineDigest.com. You already saw my prediction, kind of.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
So I mean, there you go. I do think they cover. I think the Rutgers rushing defense isn't good. I think it's just going to struggle just as much as last year. I think the numbers kind of skew it based on who they played: Temple, Syracuse, Delaware. They just gave up 130 rushing yards to Delaware starting running back. Was he one of the top players in FCS last year? Yes. So I guess you got to give him a little bit of credit, but you still can't give that up to a Delaware team whose offensive line is, you would hope, is a lot smaller than your Big Ten defensive line. So I got to give it to Michigan. Their offense this year is ridiculous. Are they running the ball about 40 times a game, 50 times a game at this point?
Yeah, it's been pretty much 2-to-1 running to passing. I mean, it's just worked so well that they haven't, like you said, Cade's thrown the ball 37 times through 3 games. I mean, literally, I said this on the radio today. His stat line through 3 games is like a standard game for most quarterbacks now. He's 24 of 37 for 371 and 3 touchdowns. Like that's a game for most really high-powered offenses that throw the ball. But
yeah. So I mean, put that in the factor in the run game, and then I don't even think we talked about it yet. Aiden Hutchinson's fucking good. Well, excuse me for cursing, but damn, he's
all right.
3.5 sacks. I think he's PFF's number 1 ranked edge rusher. Yeah. And from what I've read and from what I've heard, they're moving him around too. So this is a Rutgers team whose offensive tackles combo has been switched 3 times in 3 games for starter-wise, I should say. So it's like you move Hutchinson around. It's like, all right, go pick on the left tackle. All right, you know what? The right tackle's sucking now. Go pick on him real quick.
Yeah.
The guy, I'd be shocked if the guy didn't come out of there with at least 2 sacks.
Well, I'll remember that for our little prediction segment we do on Friday, but he's been really good. You're right. I mean, the grades, however you view Pro Football Focus, I personally think they're pretty damn good. I like those numbers. I think they're broken down pretty well. And they're pretty pro-Michigan this year. Blake Corum's at the top for running backs. Aiden Hutchinson's at the top for defensive ends. Cade McNamara's up there in the Big Ten. I know he hasn't had to do much, but he's graded out really well. So Michigan fans are loving Pro Football Focus right now. That's interesting. The shuffling at the O-line is probably not the greatest formula to slow a guy like Aiden Hutchinson down. And you hit the nail on the head, man. Yeah. New defensive coordinator Mike McDonald is moving him around a ton. And that's just something that we didn't see out of him before. I guess before we get you out of here, all right. So Rutgers is 3-0. If they do lose this game, which, maybe the rational Rutgers fans will say like, we want to play them tough. Let's hope it's scrappy and close maybe, but I just don't know if we've got what it takes. What would be an acceptable, like, not lose their minds type of thing? Like is it 10? Is it 15? Like where are we at here on this sliding scale? Because we did this before heading into the Washington game before we really knew what Washington was going to look like.
Yeah, I think if you can keep it within like 10 to 14 points, ideally that's a win, I would think, in Rutgers' book at least. Just because this is a really good Michigan team. They're going to compete for that Big Ten East title, especially since Ohio State already has a loss. It's huge. I don't know if you guys call it Ohio State or that team up.
We're not. Yeah,
we go with Ohio State on here. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough. In terms of Rutgers keeping it close, I want to say 10 to 14, like I said, and then after that, I don't know if you've seen Rutgers' schedule. It's not good.
Yeah, it gets pretty hairy these next few weeks.
Ohio State, then Michigan State, back to back to back. It's like, all right, what the heck? But it's gonna be tough. I do think it's gonna be tough for them to sneak a bowl game, but they have 3 wins already, so it's a hot start. I think Vegas had them at 4.5, so I don't know. The Big Ten's interesting this year, though. I'll tell you that much. I think there's some teams overrated, some teams underrated. But
I was going to say the exact same thing. Heading into the year, I kind of looked at like Indiana as like, I think Michigan might lose to them. Now I feel like Michigan would beat them by double digits. It's just like things of Michigan State I thought looked awful, and now they're like, their offense is the best I've seen it in a decade. It
makes no sense to me.
It's pretty crazy.
And then my hot take of our podcast that we just did is that Iowa's kind of a little overrated.
Chris, I think, has said that before.
Yeah, I think so. I was a little bit over. I mean, the Big Ten is so strange this year. I mean, you really don't know what to expect. So
I mean, there's a lot of question marks all around. I do think Michigan has a shot at that Big Ten East, though. So that should make your little following pretty happy.
It should. Well, there you have it. Everything you could possibly need to know about the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, Greg Schiano, their playmakers, their paintball snipers, everything that you need to know from Richie Schneidreich, the master out there in New Jersey. Yeah, yikes,
Richie.
Right? Richie, thanks so much for the time, man. We'll do it again if we need you, and good luck and have fun out there.
Yeah, I will, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care. There you have it. Really good stuff for Richie, man. Like I said, I've only met him a couple of times, but every interaction I've ever had with him has been solid. So I was excited to get him on here, even though he's an enemy. He's an enemy over at Rivals now. I guess. Like I said, I worked at Rivals for 5-6 years, 6 seasons, and I know everybody there. I know all those guys. I'm pretty close friends with a handful of them, and it's really kind of strange that I can't like refer to their stuff all that much, or like we got to be careful about what we say and use from. I don't know. Even the guys at the Wolverine, like Chris Ballas, John Borton, Austin Fox when he was still there. I mean, those were my guys. Those were my boys that I worked with for a long time. Clayton Safey, I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last year or so, but he wasn't there when I worked there. Anyways, really good stuff from Richie, man. I'm glad he was able to jump on. He contributed and pretty much put the whole Know the Enemy piece together that just went up a little bit ago. So go check that out on WolverineDigest.com. It's got the Rutgers' biggest strength, their biggest weakness, 3 players to know, and then a little blurb and a prediction of what Richie thinks is going to happen. I believe he said 35-13. No. So he's in that.
What more could you ask for? Seems like a pretty damn good article.
Yep, that's it. That is it. So he thinks Michigan will cover. Again, that number is 20.5 right now. We'll kind of see if that line moves any more throughout the week, and then we'll talk more specifically about that come Friday. So we'll get into that. All right, Chris, I want to give you the floor a little bit. You said you wanted to discuss something with me before we got on this podcast. It was about the amount of time put in or something along the lines of just what you're kind of figuring out now as we get into the season. I feel like you just kind of sat there for a while, so I want to let you get the chords going a little bit.
Well, how's the audio? Is the audio sounding okay?
No, it's kind of crackling out a little bit. Why don't you do a quick reboot?
I'm going to reboot. I'll hand it over to you. I'll reboot and I'll come back in. I know, I don't want you to start hemorrhaging listeners, so I will be back. Don't worry,
He'll be back.
everybody. I will be back.
Chris Breiler will be back ASAP. I'm going to talk just for a couple minutes about the media availability today that we had, man. We had Sharon Moore and we had Ron Bellamy, and I'm telling you what, these dudes are rising stars in the profession, both in their Bellamy might be creeping into his 40s, but Sharon Moore is in his mid to early 30s, and both of these guys are just cut from a cloth that you want to be around, whether it's, an assistant coaching position like they have right now at Michigan, or heavily involved in recruiting or on-campus stuff with high school coaches and players and families. They're dynamic. They are dynamic at it. They're talented at it. And I left that meeting today saying, these two guys are future head coaches. I didn't, just for those nitpickers out there and those people that have a problem with reading comprehension, I didn't say they were Michigan's only two coaches that could potentially be a head coach. For God's sakes, people.
Are we talking about your Twitter followers again?
Yes, dude. And this might lead into what you're going to say a little bit, but we talked to those two specifically today, and I left feeling like, damn, those guys are on the fast track, man. They are going to climb this ladder in a hurry. Sharon Moore already came from Central Michigan as a tight ends coach, a couple years coaching tight ends at Michigan. Now he's the O-line coach and co-OC. It's only a matter of time before he's a head coach. And Ron Bellamy was a phenomenal head coach in high school. Now, granted, it's a big jump from from high school to college, but he's got everything you need. He used the word genuine to talk about himself, and that is exactly what you feel when you listen to him speak, and he talks about telling the players that he loves them and how far that goes. And I put an article up about it as soon as I got back. It hasn't been lip service from the beginning. When we heard it from Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Ross, and Hassan Haskins in Indy, and then through fall camp, and now through three games, these guys are ready to run through a wall for these dudes, and it's because of guys like Ron Bellamy and Sharon Moore and Steve Klinkscale and Mike Hart. Haven't heard it so much about like a George Hilo, but I've heard a lot about Mike McDonald too, and how it's a dialogue, it's a back and forth. He listens to everybody. It's his defense, but it's not. It's everybody's defense. So I just came away thoroughly impressed by those guys. Two guys, they're honestly the two guys that I know the best on the staff, because covering recruiting for many years like I did, I got to know Ron Bellamy extremely well when he was at West Bloomfield, and Sharon Moore was at Central Michigan, my alma mater, and I used to do some recruiting stuff with them as well. So I'm just super excited that they're at Michigan, that they're doing such a good job, and I think they are worth their weight in gold when it comes to reshaping that culture that clearly needed a cleanse. And also, they're really freaking smart, and they know their stuff, and they're doing a great job. And my hat's off to Sharon Moore, because he has taken that O-line group that I thought could be good. I didn't know how fast. I thought there would be bumps in the road. It has been as smooth a sailing as you could possibly imagine through 3 games. So just wanted to talk on that for a minute while we get Chris back in the fold here, and just give props where I think they're due, because those two guys are stars in the making.
Well, I think we said it too going into the season, that because the players spent so much time during the offseason talking about culture and relationships and brotherhood, that we were going to see how much that was going to mean once the season began. And now that we're, more than 3 weeks into the year, I hate it, because I thought Washington was going to tell us everything we needed to know. And I feel like I want to give a lot of praise to the defense, give a lot of praise to the team. But from a defensive standpoint, we've seen things like this before with Don Brown, when the competition just hasn't been all that great. So everything inside of me wants to buy in 100%, and that there has been a wholesale change, and that there's a different, I guess, energy in Schembechler Hall. But until we see it on the field against a legitimate opponent, I think every Michigan fan is always going to kind of have, that one foot in, 1 foot out. You can't quite commit all the way yet.
Yeah,
I feel like you're that guy. You're that guy. You're fighting it. You're fighting, just giving your whole heart to the Wolverines, and I don't understand it.
No, listen, I have gone back and forth with so many people about this. They're like, you're a hater. Why don't you go cover another school? I want Michigan to win every game. I want them to beat the piss out of Michigan State and Ohio State. I've been very clear about that. My frustration lies in I haven't seen it, and I really thought we would sooner and earlier and at a higher level with Jim Harbaugh, and we just haven't. And I'm not I don't hate the guy personally. I don't wish ill will. I don't want them to do poorly, but I'm just going to call it like I see it. And a lot of people have an issue with that, and I'm okay with that. I'm not going to talk any differently. Some, there's no doubt about it. Some, I'm not going to speak on it any differently. I just think that's, if you can look at things objectively and call it like you see it, then that's what you see. That's what's there.
That's doing your job, right?
Chris, I sent you a message. I don't know if you saw it. It might be your headset crackling. Maybe you just want to pop the headset off and just talk
Let's
through
see
the
if we
computer
go.
and see how that ends up going, because it's just doing a little crackly thing, and I feel like especially on the podcast that's going to be a I got you, but now the quality is just not as good. So I don't know, man. It might be that I don't know if it's that headset's got a loose connection or something in the microphone port, or if it's the actual piece coming to your mouth, but it's crackling. I don't know. We'll tough through it tonight. We'll try to get it solved up and switched before next time. But I think we'll be all right. Okay, they're actually saying that you're clear to them, so maybe it's just on my end. I don't know why that would be, but hopefully It sounds all right, and we'll check on it as we continue. That's actually better. It's not crackling now.
Okay, so where was I at? Rutgers.
We were going to talk about.
We were talking about
life.
Harbaugh. We were talking about.
Life
we were going to talk about
life as a grinder.
Right. Well, it's weird because I obviously I was running around all day today, and then I called you, and something that I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate to is just trying to find like a work-life balance. Like I put out a post not too long ago, just kind of explaining my, what I started off doing. I was in sales, and then getting to do this job. And when you go from a 9 to 5 to something like this, it's hard to disconnect. You're not really sure when you can unplug. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, in their professional career. You just, when you start doing something you love, in particular, sports, where any report can drop at any minute. And so you feel like if you're disconnected, you might be missing something. So yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, it is that way. I mean, we've talked
like you
about
said.
it.
Well, you said you laid down with your kid the other night, and you felt like that was the first time you had seen him during the day, right?
Yeah, yesterday
Yeah.
I gave him his bath and put him to bed last night. And I'm like, I think I haven't seen him all day, and like I'm in the house, I'm here, I'm like in the basement working, or I'm doing whatever. Today you go to the presser again. Shout out to Josh Taubman and Jacob Cohen, who are crushing some work for us, but they've been going to the pressers. Jacob couldn't make it today, so I went. No big deal. But yeah, it just kind of all adds up. And I was talking to you, as covering recruiting was maybe worse, honestly, because stuff can happen at any moment. You got kids out on the West Coast dropping stuff at 11 p.m. at night that you got to jump on and do. Don't get quite as much of that now doing this slightly shifted role. But middle of the day, my wife is here, my little guy's here. We go out like for a walk down the block and, down the street, and I feel like I'm wasting time. And that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
Like, I should feel like I'm missing out and wasting time when I'm doing work, not when I'm spending time with my family. But honestly, like, I just feel like at all moments of the day, I could be on my computer doing something for the website, or some graphic, or some photo, or some research, or something. Yeah. I really feel like that could be almost every day. I know you said earlier that you just feel like you're just on your phone all the time, and maybe you don't feel it as much as someone else.
Well, but I know it. I feel like people are on their phone all the time anyway.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you're in this industry, like you just it's constant refreshing your feed, checking different things to make sure you're not missing anything, because you want to be on top of it. So, if anybody out there questions, I guess, our work ethic, like we're working hard to like make sure that we're bringing everybody really good content, and we're staying on top of things. And we're two dads, man. We're trying to there's a lot to balance, but I think we found kind of, at least we're finding our groove here. I hope I can find it on the home side of things and learn to balance a little bit more.
Throw this out there. Drywall finisher, making his own schedule, hard work, absolutely hard work. Doing drywall, dude, if you're doing it on the ceiling too, especially, that's like one of the hardest.
I tried to drive. You know what? What was his name? Donald? I didn't see his name.
Dependent Fanatic is the name he's going with. But,
I just actually, we're doing the home remodel thing, and I was trying to drywall a ceiling and like fix. I had no idea how difficult drywall is. You can't get it even. There's no way to get it even. There's always lines in it. There's always like some sort of unevenness in it. So, shout out to that gentleman there, because drywalling is a pain in the ass.
Yeah. But no, it's just you love the gig. I mean, I've talked about this before. I've never had any job where I just punched out and was done for the day. I don't know what that's like. I graduated college. I became a teacher. Anybody out there who's a teacher knows that job is not done when the bell rings. You've got grading papers, you've got prep, you've got classroom stuff. Excuse me. I was also a coach, so I coached football and basketball. So that was 2/3 of the school year. Once basketball got over with, I seriously felt like the days were 10 hours longer. I'm like, what am I going to do with this extra time? But it's not like working in an office or working in a in a factory or something like that, where you get done with work and you go home and you don't do any more work because you can't.
Yeah.
Like at this job and the teaching job, you bring your work home with you and you've constantly got stuff to do. I'm not complaining, but I just really don't know what that's like. Even when I go on a full-on vacation with my wife, I've got my phone, I'm scrolling Twitter, I'm hitting you up, I'm texting you about, I mean, it just never, it never goes away. If I do decide to shift gears to something else or finally hang it up altogether, I don't even know what that's going to feel like, because I've never, in my professional life, I've never had it, but wouldn't trade it for anything, dude.
No,
I mean,
not
you and
at
I
all.
look at each other on a game day Saturday and we're like, not a bad day at the office, getting paid.
Yeah.
You cannot beat it. You cannot beat it. All right. Come off the soapbox now. Let's do some just want to.
I just want to start by saying go blue.
Let's say it. Let's freaking say it then. Chris, I want to kick this to you because I feel like you've focused on this a little bit more than I have, but this culture at Michigan that has become more and more apparent, more tangible, more measurable. I mean, it's always one of those things that you don't know until you know kind of thing. I think Jim Harbaugh has mentioned that before. But again, after talking to Ron Bellamy and talking to Sharon Moore today, I'm just so sold on what these new hires have done for the the psyche of the players, the approach, the motivation, the fun that they're having. I mean, multiple people have mentioned fun multiple times. You know, if you ever seen that scene from Remember the Titans, like 0 fun, sir. Like that's what football usually is. But these guys are having a good time, and certainly beating the brakes off of teams by 60 will do that. And you take an L and, things can shift in a hurry. But I'm just saying right now, as we sit, how maybe not surprised. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't know if there's a way to measure it, but just the culture of what we've seen so far and the words we keep hearing and how it seems to be translating to the field has got to be, again, I don't know if it's a surprise, but it's certainly one of the most drastic changes from a season to a season I can remember.
Yeah. Well, you heard Ron Bellamy talk about, telling the players he loves them. You heard Ronnie Bell, shortly after he found out he was named captain, talk about he's never felt a sense of brotherhood like he feels this year. And I think, again, in the preseason, it's hard to read too much into that. But when you see, the results on the field, you can kind of see that, they're getting up for each other a little bit more. There's more celebration on the sideline. Guys are just really supporting each other. And I think it goes a long way. We talked about this during the offseason, that if you can make a lot of little changes, especially to like the culture and the environment within Schembechler Hall, it can go a long way. It seems like they have done that. But I was thinking about this a little bit, and I wanted to ask you, like, is there anything that can prevent the wheels from falling off if they lose a game? Any game this year?
That can prevent it? So you think the wheels will fall off if they lose?
That can prevent this fan base from. We know what's going to happen when Michigan. Right. We know what's going to happen. Like, is it one of those things where they've got to be perfect? Like, it's all been kumbaya so far. Everybody's loving it. Everybody's enjoying it. But I am really wondering, like, will it all just go away if they lose to Michigan State? Will it all just go away if they lose, to Penn State, in October? I wonder.
This is the game I was going to cite. I mean, we're going to find out in less than 2 weeks, I think, because that's the game where they actually have. I don't think they have any shot of losing this weekend. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think they're going to roll Rutgers. I think they're going to cover the spread again. I think they're going to I'm already thinking about what my score prediction is going to be, and it's not close. But in Madison at Camp Randall, I know they haven't played a lot of times since 2001, but that's the last time they won there. If they can win that game, I mean, that's gonna tell me a ton, because these are the games under Jim Harbaugh that they've lost. Yeah. And you go on the road against a good team and you lose. That's what it's been. So if that changes next Saturday, then that means things have really changed to the core of the whole program and who's there and who's calling shots, and that's what it'll tell me. Now, if Michigan goes to Wisconsin and they lose a close game, or they lose, even by a score or two, I think the wheels will fall off among the fan base, because it's like, damn it, like I thought it was different this year, and now it's the same thing we saw every year. We're right back to where it's been. There's nothing different. It was cool to beat the shit out of Northern Illinois and Rutgers, and I don't want to find out but I think that I don't know how it couldn't go that direction.
Right.
I don't.
And then if you go to Madison and you win there on the road, which is a big win, you go to Lincoln, Nebraska, you win there, you go into your bye week, and then you come out and you've got Northwestern, you've got Michigan State, you've got Penn State. So I'm just like, even if they get through Wisconsin, I just don't like this schedule is tough. And I feel like if they hit a loss, I've just wondered because it's all been so positive and there's been so much energy about what they're doing and the brotherhood and the environment. But I do think if they do go into Madison and they win, I think that says something about how important your mental makeup is in your culture, because it's Michigan traditionally, to your point, has been a team that seems like they fold when they get against legitimate competition. Like, I can't remember the last time I saw Michigan go out and battle a top 10 team for a full 4 quarters where like it was a game the whole time and Michigan was able to pull it out. I can't remember. I mean, Notre Dame, you know, the heroics with Denard Robinson, maybe that's the last time I've seen something like that. But yeah, if culture and energy and brotherhood means as much as we all think it does, then we should see it materialize up in Camp Randall.
We'll see. We will see. I mean, like we said at the beginning of the year, or like we said since the beginning of the year, it was week 2. That was it. And that just kind of fell flat because Washington apparently isn't very good and Michigan handled them. I mean, I'm not taking away the way Michigan won that game, and 2-0 at that time was 2-0, but I thought they were going to be a lot better. I thought that was going to be a contested game. I thought it was going to be a battle, and it just wasn't. So
we won't be able to move it after,
week
right?
5.
We're not. So we're sure that Wisconsin's
Wisconsin. I mean, like, right? You know, they still have a good quarterback in Graham Mertz. They still are going to have an O-line. They're still going to play sound defensive football. I don't know, you know, if Michigan goes into Camp Randall and wins by 20, which, good God, can you even imagine an outcome like that? It would be incredible for the momentum and for what's moving forward. Like you said, then you got Nebraska going to the bye game, Northwestern. I mean, Michigan's going to be top 10 in the country by that point. We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit with that, but
take it 1 week at a time, Brandon.
Your question and your point, I think, is valid. I think that there won't be anything after Wisconsin where you're like, wow, Wisconsin just wasn't that good. I don't know how you could be saying that. Yeah, I know they lost to Penn State in a close one at their place, but it's still Wisconsin. The formula that's there and that always works is still there and works again. I won't be saying it, I don't think. I mean, I don't, you know, I still think they're a pretty good football team. I know they got beat, pretty
Penn State's a good
not
football
handily,
team
but
too.
Yeah, absolutely. Penn State's got 2 of the best wins of the early season so far to win that game and then beat Auburn in the whiteout. So I don't think there will be any move in the goalposts after that one, but we'll see. We will see. All right, I wanted to ask you this question. I think it's kind of a burning question, but want to ask it right now because I can already imagine you going like, oh, who am I gonna? You know, that's what we're going for when we ask those burning questions. But I think right now it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer that the best players on both sides of the ball have been Blake Corum and Aiden Hutchinson. I think that I don't know how anybody else would pick anybody else. So I want your non-Aiden, non-Blake MVPs through 3 games on both sides of the ball.
All right, I'll go with Hassan Haskins offensively, even though I feel like I want to go with one of the offensive linemen, but I feel like it's a unit. You know, that's a unit.
Yeah,
so
can you just grab one guy? Probably not.
Yeah, so I'll go with Hassan Haskins out of the backfield because I feel bad for Hassan, man. He's had such a good year. He's been so good on the football field, and it just so happens that Blake Corum has been on another level, you know. But I would go with Hassan on the offensive side of the ball, and then defensively. Shoot, I don't know. I mean, RJ Moten's are always around places. Josh Ross is, probably Josh Ross. He's racking up the tackles. Like if you look at the, the stat sheet after the game, he's active. He's all over the field. He's one of those guys that it feels like he's been at Michigan for like 10 years. He's just, I know his brother played here. But I would probably go with Josh Ross because he's that leader on the defense. Captain too, right?
Yep.
Captain. So yeah, I mean, I would go with him. If you look at the numbers, he's had a pretty solid start. It's not bad. Haskins and Josh Ross.
Yeah, no, I don't think you'd get a lot of people arguing about that. I think it's interesting because I think if you ask the Michigan coaches, they might say Dax Hill, even though it's not like numbers. It's not 10 tackles a game. It's not 7 pass breakups, but it's asking him to do a million things, putting him all over the field, locking him up in man, making sure he knows the zone drops. All of this is new to him, and I think he's graded out as good as anybody on the team through 3 weeks in terms of just being in the right place at the right time, tackling efficiently, even though the numbers haven't been like, they're never going to be as high as the linebackers, but it's an interesting discussion because I think there's a couple of guys you could go with on both sides beyond, once you get past Blake and Aiden, because I think if you grabbed 100 Michigan fans and said, give me your offensive MVP, 100 of them are picking Blake Corum. Yeah. And 100 of them are picking Aiden Hutchinson. I don't think you would get any different answers.
Maybe AJ Henning. I mean, he, every time he touches the ball, he seems to go. The problem is he's not on the field enough. But every time he touches it, he's going 25, 30 yards.
For those of you listening, and this, I'm not trying to bag on anybody or the decision making because they've been, Michigan has looked so good and so efficient. AJ Henning played 5 snaps against Northern Illinois. 5. That's crazy. He had 7 touches or 6 touches because he fielded 4 or 5 punts and he had a little pop pass and a reverse. So he's doing a lot with his limited play, but 5 snaps on offense for AJ Henning against Northern Illinois. Like, I don't know if anybody on the planet would have guessed that's all he played. I mean, he did. He only had 2 offensive touches and then a few in special teams, but I don't think that's enough. I think you got to get that guy on the field way, way more than that. He played less than a bunch of walk-ons that I don't even know who they are. And again, you're up by 60, halftime, the starters are out. You get those walk-ons in there, let them play, man. They're sweating and bleeding out there just like everybody else. That's awesome for them to get some snaps. But I just think AJ Henning should be on the field a lot. I mean, he's looked dynamic in every game that he has got his hands on the ball. So I don't know. That would be a very, very small nitpick from the NIU game. And I mean, I don't know if you saw. I don't care. I always forget if you can see the comments, Chris. But somebody threw AJ Henning's name out there as a potential offensive MVP. I don't think your offensive MVP playing 5 snaps. I just don't think that's. I don't think that's possible. But I think that kind of speaks to his ability and how good he's looked in those, those quick flashes of playing time. Just it's been driven by the game script so far. I do think if it was like a close game and you're back and forth, he'd be in there more. But anyway, that's a fun discussion to have. And I've only got one topic left, man. And I think this one it's really interesting. I'm ripping it off from Fox Sports, but it is really interesting if you ask me. And I don't know if this year is the factored year, but of the what I would call historic blue blood programs, these mentioned, which one of these teams is first to win a national title?
Oh, I saw this.
Texas, USC, Miami, or Michigan.
You know what's great about this is I saw this question come through on social media, and I was like, man, I've always been trying to find like similar programs to Michigan that I feel like they're a blue.
That's a pretty good group.
That's a pretty damn good group, and I don't know. So Michigan, USC. I was surprised Florida's not in there. Are they? No,
Florida's not.
Florida's
no,
not
Miami.
in there, so
they went with Miami.
All right. I don't know. I would be inclined to say Michigan out of the group because I feel like they're best positioned right now, to do that long term. But it's hard to pick Michigan. I don't know. Picking Michigan to win a national championship in football just it's hard to get your mouth to do that. So I'll go Michigan because I'm a homer, but really I think it's just because the program with Michigan is further along than the other teams you mentioned. Texas, Miami, USC. I just don't think they're quite as far along as where Michigan is right now. And if this assistant coaching staff is as good as it seems like it is, then all day Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, so like USC just fired their coach. They're starting over right now, starting over in a rebuild. Yeah, Notre Dame's another one you could probably throw into that list, actually.
Side note, what's great? Do you know who Texas's leading receiver is this year?
Probably Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, I think he's got like 8 receptions on the year. But
I was just trying to see. So Michigan's last national title obviously was 97. So Florida had one in 08.
Okay, yeah.
Miami had one in 01, Texas 05, USC 04. So
Michigan's
I
due.
guess
it's our turn.
There you go. Well, that is a fun debate because you've got, and honestly though, It's been the longest for Michigan, and those other schools have such a recruiting advantage that Michigan does not have. It's not even funny. Like for a Texas, a USC, and a Miami to not be able to compete in their own conference like every single year is blasphemy. Honestly, it really is. Like you throw a rock around the campus at USC and you hit a 4-star receiver in the head. Like, and they land them. They're not struggling to recruit. They're just struggling to put any semblance of a program together and continuity and a solid staff and making the right decisions at head coach and the offensive approach and whatever down the list. Like you look at those teams. I remember there's been 2 teams in my life where I looked at them and said, they're never going to be not amazing again. Yeah. Like how in the world is that team ever not going to kick everyone's ass? And it was USC back when they had Reggie Bush and Pete Carroll and they were just dominating everybody. And it was Florida when Urban Meyer was there. I remember thinking those 2 teams are just set up so perfectly to dominate forever that they're never not going to be good. And so your mention of Florida, and I'm sure there's others who are maybe a hair older than me who probably felt that way about Miami when they were, the U way back in the early 90s or maybe late 80s, whenever that was, Jimmy Johnson, and Florida State when they were in their prime and Bobby Bowden was winning titles and, ranked in the top 5 for like 15 years straight or something. I'm sure you could probably bring a couple other schools into the mix, but that was Fox College Football's Fox whatever Twitter account or Instagram, I think I saw, had those 4 schools, Michigan, USC, Texas, and Miami, and threw that question out there, which team is going to be the first to win a national title? It doesn't honestly feel like any of them are that close.
Yeah.
So
but out of the group, who would you put as the closest? It's got to be Michigan, right? I don't feel like any of them are closer, but you've got a coach that's been there for 7 years. You're 3-0, big power brand.
I might be more inclined to say USC because I just think if they can get it together in the Pac-12, their road is the easiest. I mean, now you've got the playoff and it's about to expand and you're going to have to play a really good team anyway. But as long as Michigan has to deal with Ohio State every single year, that makes it tougher on them. Then, Miami's got to deal with Clemson and Texas is dealing with Oklahoma. So I just think out of those 4 teams, USC's got the least resistance, but they're probably the farthest from it right now without even a head coach in place. So it's a fun discussion to have. I mean, and I bet if you grabbed a couple homers from each fan base, they'd pick their school. But I think if you really broke down kind of like what each program has going for it, where they're at, I mean, Michigan's got the longest tenured coach. I don't think it's even close, right? Texas is in year 1.
Yep.
No, is it year 1?
Didn't they fire
Sarkisian, right?
Sarkisian. This is his first year because that was the whole thing with Xavier Worthy.
That's right. That's right. So that's why Worthy's there. So year 1 for Sarkisian. There's not even a head coach at USC. I can't remember how far is it. Manny Diaz.
It's like third year.
Yeah, he's been there a little while. Yeah, and now, Dependent Fanatic throwing some other good stuff out there. Obviously, the conference realignment's going to change a lot of that too, with Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC. So, I mean, there's some different factors. There's some different things you throw in there, and you start looking at, but they've all got talent. They're all historically great programs. They've all won titles in the last, God, you got to say you've got to say 30 years now with Michigan. We're coming up on that number, but that's an interesting debate that you could have about which one of those programs is going to win a title first. I really thought Michigan would have played for one by now in 7 years under Jim Harbaugh.
I did for sure a playoff spot was a given. I mean, that, landing in the playoffs, winning the Big Ten, that's what that means. I thought for sure it would have happened at least once. And we've talked about this before. I think if it happens once, whether it comes in 2016 or 2018 or whatever it happens, I just don't think there's all this talk about Harbaugh and his future. And I just think all it would have taken was one breakthrough year, and the fact that it hasn't happened yet, that's why these conversations continue to happen. So going back to your point, we want Michigan to win. I want Jim Harbaugh to succeed. I want him to do well, but you also got to look at it for what it's been. It's off to a really good start. And if Michigan goes to Madison and takes care of business, and then they get into the meat of the schedule and they're handling their business against a team like Michigan State, who looks pretty formidable, against Penn State, who looks, I mean, they just beat Auburn at home. If Michigan can go into those games and look the part, then I think the narrative starts to change about Jim Harbaugh. But the stark difference between the way they feast on the week and then what happens to Michigan when they get against a legitimate opponent, that's tough to ignore. You can't ignore it.
Jim Harbaugh is 500 against other 500 or better teams.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he's racked up a lot of wins against the bottom half, bottom third of the Big Ten. I mean, the numbers are there. I'm not cherry picking. I mean, you know, he doesn't win as an underdog. Michigan's not an underdog very often, but he doesn't win as an underdog. On the road, he's struggled, and against the teams in the conference, Wisconsin, Iowa, Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, he's mediocre at best. I mean, the numbers are what they say they are. Yeah, that'll be really interesting, though. I mean, I think it's been really hard to not get ahead of ourselves with the way things have looked. And the first few games haven't been, you know, marquee, and now we've got Rutgers, and then the Wisconsin game will be here, and we can really focus in on that one. But let's take it out of here with this, Chris, as we come up on an hour. It's year 7 for Jim Harbaugh. Right now, they're favored in every game for the rest of the year for ESPN's FPI.
Favored to go 12-0 as far as I'm concerned.
For those out there that can't remember how a couple days ago went, that was Chris's line, not mine.
Yep.
I'll put his address up on the screen. No,
I would love it. I would love it.
If Jim Harbaugh can somehow in year 7 put this thing together and win the Big Ten, does it just wipe out the shortcomings from years 1 through 6?
I've thought about this question a lot, and I think initially, yes, but I think at this point, it's gone so far. He can salvage it in terms of he can leave the university with people feeling good about his tenure here and where the program is. But in terms of like his record against Ohio State, he's never going to have a winning record against Ohio State. It's too far gone. You know, you got to have a winning record against Michigan State. You've got to start to put together some good things. And I think if Michigan gets a Big Ten championship this year, it's going to be hard for people to not be slurping. I know I'll be slurping. I'll be loving Jimmy Harbaugh till I ride off into the sunset if we win the Big Ten. I told you, I'll get the lyrics to Mr. Brightside tattooed on me. Dude, I will go all in if they win the Big Ten this year.
Every time I hear Chris say that,
this fucking guy.
That's all I can think of. That's all I can think of. Oh, man.
I love Michigan
crying
football. I can't help it.
Crying out loud. For crying out loud. No, man. My
cockles are feeling warm about this team right now.
Warmed up. They're getting warmed up. It's something you and I have talked about. Like, what, you know, I'm not afraid to admit it. I didn't give them a snowball's chance in hell at the beginning of this year to win the Big Ten. Yeah. Not even a
you were at one point 6-6 heavy, and then I think you moved to 7.
I don't know if I was at 6-6. I don't think I was ever at 6-6 because I just looked at the schedule and really didn't see a game that I felt like they could lose. I think at 5 losses before the season started, with how things looked last year and all the uncertainty, I was like, they could and maybe should lose these 5. Now those shoulds are almost completely gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe they could, but maybe they win that game. And I wasn't saying that when the season wasn't, before the season started. That's why you love watching it.
The door's open. We're 3-0. Michigan's in the top 20. Probably going to be a top 15 team by the time we meet the Spartans in East Lansing.
I didn't even know I had cockles anymore, and now they're warm. How about that? Dependent Fanatic. Bring in some nice comments today. We appreciate that. Everybody, thanks for listening. Great stuff from Richie. Big shout out to him for doing yeoman's work out there covering Rutgers for a lot of years. Probably not the funnest job ever, but we'll be back on Friday night, man. Thanks for listening, everybody.